back, ladies and gentlemen. This time he's in a very mediocre sequel, right? So the first Dead Rising Watchtower was actually kind of fun for the most part. It had references that Easter eggs please fans, and it kind of have a very goofy but also slightly serious tone. This one is a little bit more different, right? Because this one, even though the first one kind of pleased fans and try to go for more of the fan base, this one tries, I feel like, to almost go the complete opposite and go for people that are not fans of the game, and therefore I think that's kind of where this movie kind of fails. Now, granted, you still have Easter eggs and kind of have references to the game, and those are great. Unfortunately, those shit's kind of downgraded to the point where it kind of comes across as a very basic and bland zombie movie, and that's kind of a sad thing to see. Now, overall, I do think this movie does take itself a little bit way too seriously to the point where it almost tends to kind of get boring a little bit. Now, granted, you do have that zombie killing stuff, and when they kind of do create all the weapons or whatever it may be, that's cool. Unfortunately, there's not enough of that compared to the first one, and I feel like that's kind of where this thing kind of falls flat. There is a side story in this with like the human character or whatever it may be that's kind of like trying to expose the military or whatever. I feel like that side story almost kind of reminded me of like the live action cutscenes from like Quantum Break. I just felt like they just didn't necessarily need to be there, and they weren't really that interesting. Now, I do think Jesse Metcalf actually does a pretty good job. I think he's actually pretty solid as a lead here. I wouldn't mind seeing him like in his own like game, whatever it may be, but maybe I'm the only one. Granted, this is a slight spoiler, but you know, here it goes. Frank West is not in this thing, so therefore you don't have to really worry about him. Chuck Green is actually in here, believe it or not, but you probably would not know it's Chuck Green unless you actually looked at the damn credits. Now, overall, like I said, I think this is actually kind of a fun thing for the most part, and it's kind of fun to see these, you know, zombie killing things. There's a very fun escalator scene that I'm not going to ruin for you, but I think it's actually kind of a fun thing. The problem is they do set up a sequel. It's just that this movie took itself way too seriously for this type of thing. I feel like the first one had more of a campier tone for the most part, but it still had a very seriousness to it that never really felt like a drama. Unfortunately, this one did take itself too seriously, and I feel like that's the biggest gripe you could kind of throw out there, on top of just like countless other things. But that's just my thought. Comment, subscribe, and like. I'm Chris Smith. You can watch if you want, but I definitely say the first one's a lot more better, but that's just me.